Cool. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just a quick intro. We are Report Star, and we're going to be working with Netwrix today to teach you guys some cool stuff about Active Directory and how to keep your IT environments hygienic. We're just waiting a little bit for a couple more people to join, and then we will start in about 5 more minutes. If you guys have anyone else you want to join, please feel free to send that little invitation along, and then we can chat to them too. So thanks again for joining us. We're just going to wait a little bit, give some more people a chance to join, and then we will begin. Alrighty, guys, I think that's enough time. Russell, thank you so much for helping us. We really appreciate it. I think we can go ahead.
No problems. You're welcome, Mika. Yes, just a little bit about myself. My name is Russell McDermott, and I work as a solutions engineer here for Netwrix, which is obviously a vendor for information security and governance software. We're also going to give you a demonstration on the platform around Netwrix Auditor for Active Directory, co-hosted here with our Report Star Technologies. Just before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. So all attendees are on mute. This is just to minimize any distractions with any background noise. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. If possible, obviously shall look to answer those throughout the webinar, but we will have time at the end for Q&A session as well. And also we will try and get through as many of those as we can. Just seeing whether we do have any handouts. I don't see anything that's been uploaded, but I'm sure they'll drop those in there as we go along. So, you know, keeping an eye on the handout section. Whereas, yeah, we do normally drop some documentation in there around the platform as well. So feel free to download that information. And I anticipate that today's session should take no longer than 45 minutes. We will aim to keep within these timescales, so we do appreciate that your time is very precious. And also today's session is being recorded as well. So, you know, if you need to drop off for any reason, we will send out a follow-up email with a link to the recording as well. Or if you need to pass this on to anyone, you know, also send them that link as well, where they can then also, you know, review today's session a little bit later on. Most importantly, also, you know, we do hope you enjoyed today's session. So jumping onto the agenda, obviously we've just gone over the time checks and goals. Actually, just one other thing I will bring up. We do seem to be having some strange issues with the GoToMeeting platform today. So if anyone is having any problems, yeah, please do let us know. But as mentioned, you know, we are recording today's session as well. I am going to just quickly go over a few slides around Netwrix Auditor, which will just give a bit of a product overview of the platform. And as mentioned, we'll then go into a product demonstration of the Auditor platform, but it'll also break out into a few other aspects as well to show you what else we can do. And as mentioned, you know, having that time at the end for a Q&A as well. So, you know, why are we here? Well, data has become the focal point of security efforts of organizations. You know, we've seen a huge generation in data growth in recent years, which, you know, seizes the ability to identify data that obviously requires protection. With hybrid infrastructures, you know, data is stored both on premise and in the cloud, which means maintaining security controls have, you know, obviously become a bit more of a challenge. And there's been a significant rise with increasing threats. You know, for example, data breaches are becoming more frequent. And your ever-evolving compliance landscape means new regulations impose stricter requirements and also the ability to then prove that compliance to obviously the regulators and, you know, providing that complete visibility obviously to the board. So today I'll show you how Netwrix Auditor can obviously help you ensure the security around sensitive data you store. We're going to utilize the NIST cybersecurity framework and see how Netwrix Auditor helps cover each of its stages, you know, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. But we'll also step through how the solution dramatically simplifies, obviously proving your compliance with regulatory mandates also. So at Netwrix, we address security challenges obviously by aligning our approach to the NIST cybersecurity framework. You may already be familiar with the framework. You know, it's effectively 5 processes to assist organizations with improving their ability to prevent, detect, and respond to cyber attacks. And Netwrix does this in 2 parts. Obviously, the first part is looking at the mitigation of that risk. So you must start with, you know, identifying sensitive data, knowing your valued data assets, you know, to help focus your data security efforts. And once you know where the data is, you can then review access and understand if it's exposed or if it's at risk. And then the second part of the security roadmap then utilizes Netwrix activity monitoring. Now that you know where that data is and who has access, you can then obviously monitor the activity and establish a baseline of normal behavior. And this baseline you know, allows you to then improve your reporting and visibility of abnormal behaviors, you know, mass data manipulations, perhaps unauthorized permission changes, temporary users in the privileged access groups. You know, Netwrix has that all covered. And if and when an incident does occur, Netwrix will help obviously with the response. Now, this could be as simple as an email alert, maybe automated remediation workflow that moves data, you know, perhaps to a quarantine, or removes a user's access privileges. So Netwrix will help with the investigations into the points of entry, what challenges need to be rolled back, and if a data breach did occur, who was affected and notified. Of course, an incident doesn't have to be as serious as data theft. In many cases, Netwrix has helped with users who accidentally deleted files or maybe dragged them to the wrong folder. We could also then help you to identify data handling errors with only a few clicks and present that information in an easy to understand, human readable format. So the Netwrix platform includes a broad scope of applications that provides a single pane of glass of what's going on across multiple data storages and backbone IT systems, be that on-premise or in the cloud, enabling you to then apply security policies consistently, obviously, across them. And such a broad coverage of IT systems also enables you to add new applications whenever you require, also without the administrative overheads associated with the redeployment of the entire solution. So Netwrix is installed. Obviously, you also retain the full suite, but then just license those relevant modules that you're looking to take. And if you want to add any addition on, it's also just obtaining that new license. You don't have to completely redeploy the entire solution every time. So with that in mind, I'd just like to jump over to my lab and obviously run through a demonstration, mainly on the Netwrix Auditor platform, but I'm also going to break out into some other aspects of what else Netwrix can provide as well. So what we have here is Netwrix Auditor. We are currently on version 9.95. We do obviously release a couple of updates every year. We should be scheduled to release 9.96 within the coming weeks as well. So stay tuned as that is on its way with obviously further enhancements. But once Netwrix is installed, you would typically start with your configuration and create what's called a monitoring plan. So simply come in here, add in your plan, whether it's going to be your Active Directory, selecting the data source that you want to audit, and then simply run through the wizard within a few steps. So here I can specify my data processing account, but also around my Active Directory. What I've also got is the ability to automatically configure my environment straight from the platform as well. So I can launch my configuration assistant, specify it's going to be my Active Directory, maybe a login activity as well that I want to configure. Again, specify my domain, which I'm going to monitor and configure the audit, and also utilize an account which has got access to obviously enable those settings. So then once I've configured the assessment, started that assessment, it will then analyze the settings which need to be adjusted, and then with a simple click you can then apply all those relevant audit policy settings. But again, continuing through the wizard, I can now create my database, specify my notifications, who's going to receive any reporting around the activity, and then my plan is automatically configured for me. But once my plan is set up, I then just need to specify my data source. In this case, you're adding an item, you would then select your domain to audit. So as well as my Active Directory under this plan, I'm also auditing my group policies. But we also take what are called state in time snapshots as well. So this will take a configuration snapshot of how your Active Directory or group policies are configured. So I can then look into things like the permissions around security groups or how certain things are assigned. But around activity as well, what kind of changes do I want to monitor in my Active Directory? So by default, we're always looking at your domain and configuration, but you could also audit your schema if you wanted to see who's making configuration changes to your classes and attributes. So once your plan is set up, let's come out to the main screen, and it's under the intelligence is where you start to see what's been going on within the environment. Now with those state and time snapshots, I could probably start with my risk assessment. So I can start to see what kind of security risks I have across my Active Directory. So under my user computers and permissions, I will then see data populated for that particular data source. But I've also got elements coming in here from my Windows servers, my file servers, and also SharePoint as well. So where I can start looking to security risks around those elements as well. So I'm getting a bit of a bigger picture of what kind of security risks are out there within my environment. Rather than trying to try and work out where my risks are, again, looking at the risk indicator level, I can start paying attention to those areas which are obviously at a high risk first. So for an example being things like inactive user accounts. So who's not logged on for a specified period of time. Now these user accounts could still retain their permissions to systems and data. So obviously a security risk if they are not really required. So why do I need to leave these accounts enabled? Maybe I want to start disabling these users, or if they're really not required, maybe I want to start deleting them from the Active Directory altogether. So I'm starting to minimize those risks around accounts which could then be utilized or compromised around a data breach. And under the last log on time, I can also see, when was the last time that user account was active. Now, by default, we're looking at user accounts which haven't logged on for the last 35 days. But I could also adjust this filter. Maybe I'm wanting to look at a bit of a longer period. So I want to see who's not logged on for the last 6 months, perhaps. So I've now got that list of users. What I can now do is export that report out, pass it on to the relevant IT teams, or maybe HR to begin with first. They can then review those users. Whoever needs to highlight and flag up what accounts can actually be deleted. But as well as inactive users, also looking at things like accounts which have got their passwords set to never expire. Now, your policies may stipulate that users should be resetting their passwords on a regular basis. So who within your Active Directory has got that flag enabled? Again, any regular user accounts which aren't then adhering to your policies, you can obviously then go off and remediate those risks and ensure that these users are obviously resetting their passwords on a regular basis. But another nice report also looks at user accounts which obviously don't require a password. So again, has anyone ever potentially been set up in your environment which has that that ability enabled? Let's come down to the permissions. So here you can review who's within your most privileged groups. So who currently has the keys to the kingdom? So drilling down into this report, I can now start reviewing my administrators, my domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, backup operators. So all those very high level privileged groups. Right, I've got it by group name. I can start to review my members which are in those groups. But again, it's also showing me the status around those accounts as well. Now I can see here I've got someone which is disabled within my administrators group. What is the account? I could also see this account also appears within my domain admins. Again, obviously, knowing that this user is disabled. Now, maybe someone's only really done part of their due diligence within the environment. They know this service account's no longer required, but they've only just disabled that user. But again, it's still retaining its permissions to top privileged groups. Now, if this user account was to become compromised and re-enabled, it's automatically going to have a very high level of access within the environment. So again, looking at those kind of risks and again, remediating those risks. But also looking at things like empty security groups as well. So what groups are out there within your Active Directory which don't contain any members within them? So again, drilling down into that report, I've got that list of security groups. Maybe you've got a group which is appearing here. Perhaps it was utilized for some project. Perhaps it was being granted access to data temporarily. Again, someone's only done part of their due diligence. They've tidied up their security group. They've removed the membership, but could it still be retaining its access to their actual data as well? Has anyone actually gone and removed it from the NTFS level permission? So if anyone was populated into that security group again, could they gain access to data? So rather than leaving empty security groups there within your AD, if it's not required, get rid of it. But other aspects here are around your risk assessment. Again, looking at things like your data. So, starting to go out into other applications. Is your data protected? Is the everyone group being utilized anywhere? Can it gain access to your data? And if so, where has it been granted access as well? So I'm just going to open up my other screen here. I've already preloaded this one. So, looking into those security risks around the everyone group. What access does it have to your data? Again, where has it been granted permissions? And what level of access it does have as well. So I've certainly got some security risks here where I don't want everyone being able to, certainly access things like, the CEO's confidential folder. I don't want everyone being able to read that information. Maybe someone's been adjusting permissions. I can start looking into, my reporting if I've been running Netwrix to see, has anyone recently adjusted permissions and granted the everyone group access. So again, you get remediating security risks around those overexposed groups, but also looking at things like direct permissions across your data as well. So who's not within a security group which has got direct access to your data. Under things like your infrastructure, so this is now looking at your Windows servers, things here reported on like inappropriate operating systems. So under the custom risk indicators, we've already got some baseline indicators set. So looking at some OS versions. Now, if it also doesn't meet one of these baselines, it will then come up under the IT risk. But again, you can add in additional builds into those risk indicators as well to highlight servers which should be okay, but obviously those that don't meet that build are obviously going to be obviously outdated. Things like Server 2003, Server 2008, which are no longer going to be supported by Microsoft, so they're not going to start be receiving critical updates. But also things like Windows updates as well. Are they disabled anywhere across your servers? So the risk assessment's a nice area where you can then start with, looking at where your risks are, remediating those risks. Once those new snapshots have been collected, reviewing this report on a regular basis and start to see, is my security posture now improving? Another nice element you've got from the main screen is the enterprise overview dashboard. So it's a very top level report. It's going to be looking at all activity across all data sources which you may be utilizing with Netwrix. But again, if it's just Active Directory, you'll see elements come in here as well. But over the last week, I can now start to look at what activity has been happening. So I can see all of my changes by day, looking into things like failed activity trends. So again, failed logon activity across Active Directory, maybe there's failed access to data perhaps. What data access trends do I have? Who's doing the most reads, modifications and deletions across my file servers, SharePoint, Office 365, as well as structured databases across SQL and Oracle as well. But also where were those changes made? So what are my top 5 servers? Who's been making those changes, and all changes grouped by data source as well. And you can also drill down into any of these aspects as well. So let's take a look at what's been happening in my Active Directory over the last week. So I can now drill down and look into that activity. So I can see all of my users which have been making changes, the object type which has been changed. Again, what action took place to that object type? Was something added, modified, deleted? Again, what was it? Where did it happen? And when it took place as well. So we're taking all that data from the security event logs, and we present it to you in a nice, easy to read human format where I can easily understand who done it, what happened, where did it happen, and when did it happen. So let's go into the reporting. Let's go down to our Active Directory reports. So Active Directory is broken out into your change and state in time, but also part of the Active Directory license, you've also got auditing capabilities for your group policies. And again, you've also got your login activity. And new recently, we've also introduced Active Directory Federated Services as well. So again, you can also audit login events across that particular data source as well. But let's go down into our change reports. So changes, obviously, who's making changes, to your AD. You can run all reports to look at all activity or look into something a little bit more specific. But again, you've got just a top level dashboard report just for that data source as well if you wanted to. So maybe I'm just wanted to see, at a high level, what's been going on within Active Directory. I can change my time frame again, could go back and look at the activity. You have this perhaps been an abnormal spike in activity across my AD, looking at the changes by date. What are my domain controllers which have had the most activity? Again, who are my top admins making those changes, and what's the most modified object types as well? And again, through here, I can start drilling down into that activity as well. But maybe I wanted to run a bit more of a specific report. Perhaps I want to know, has there been any activity around my privilege groups? So again, here I can start to see who is changing my domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins. So just allow that to generate. So again, by group name, I can start to see the activity that's happening. So I've got someone here who's been added, someone's been removed. Again, who is the member that was added and removed? Who is it that done that activity? And again, the date and time at the event as well. But I can also adjust my filters. Maybe I wanted to look back in time. It might not have happened just yesterday. Maybe it happened a little while ago. So again, we're holding 6 months worth of audit data within Netwrix for a year reporting. So I could go back in time and look at the history of what's been taking place. Maybe I'm wanting to filter it down to a particular admin, which has been making changes to see, a little bit closely what that individual person's been doing. You can export data out from these reports if you wanted to, or even subscribe to every single report in Netwrix as well. So setting up that subscription, I can have this delivered to me on a regular basis. Yeah, maybe I wanted this report every week, or maybe every month perhaps, or even daily. And utilizing the filters, I can then set this to fine tune what data it is that I want to receive within that specific report. But as well as looking at obviously changes around my privilege groups, I can also monitor changes to all of my other security groups as well. So again, these groups could be then granted access to data. If anyone's being added to those groups, what would they then gain access to? For example, here my company secrets group. I can then see, obviously someone was added into that group. And again, who is it that's granted permissions, as well as activity around my HR as well. Now, there might be something a little bit suspicious going on here, perhaps. I can see someone being added and removed from my company secrets group. It's the same member. And again, on my HR group as well, I've got the same account which has been added and removed. So maybe I'm wanting to look at the activity around this user a little bit more closely to see what's been going on. Maybe I've got a rogue admin on my environment, wants to do malicious activity, but doesn't want to do it under his own account, so he's utilizing maybe another one. But as well as looking at changes to your security groups, you're also looking into things like your user account changes, so the creation, modification, and deletion of users. So, getting down into the details of what's been going on. Also looking at any attributes which have been changing on those users as well. Whether you're utilizing things like maybe the phone number or address or job title stuff. You can see all that kind of activity around any kind of changes. But more importantly, again, I can look into the creation and deletion of users within the Active Directory. Maybe I'm wanting to monitor the status changes. So I want to closely pay attention to maybe user accounts which are being enabled, maybe account lockouts which keep occurring. So again, what is the account that keeps locking out? Where is that lockout originating from? What is that workstation that person's trying to access, where it's happening? But also I can monitor user password changes as well. By default, this report is disabled within the platform. It does tell you within the details here how to enable this report. So utilizing this, I can then closely monitor people resetting their passwords as well from their endpoints. So again, what is the user account? And again, what was the date and time they also changed their password as well. But more importantly, maybe I wanted to keep a close eye on administrators also resetting passwords as well. So again, who is the admin and what accounts does that person reset the password to? But lots of other reporting, whether I'm wanting to audit maybe things like site changes, schema changes, if anyone is changing things like so got a bit blank there on my mind. Operation master roles, so again, your FISMO roles perhaps, domain trusts, but also looking into things like organizational unit changes as well. So is anyone maybe delegating access to a certain element within the Active Directory, perhaps granting access to an OU, giving someone the ability to do changes within that OU. So again, here I've made some actions. Well, again, what's the OU, but the full path to where that OU resides. And what permissions have I changed, where I've granted some user access, who did I grant access, and what did I give that person the ability to do within that organizational unit. But as well as your change reports, you've also got your state in time as well. So the state in time is going to show you how your Active Directory is currently configured, whether you are wanting to run reports around all the permissions, or start looking into your security groups perhaps. So there is a nice report which will show you all of your group members. So all distribution groups, security groups, who are the members within those groups. But it also looks into things like group nesting as well. So here I've got my group name. Again, I can start to review the current members within those groups, also ensuring that only relevant people have access. Maybe I wanted to query, why has a regular user got access to my ESX admins security group? Why do I want, why should that person be managing my virtual hosts? Maybe someone's changed permissions which they shouldn't be changing. But as mentioned, you also look into things like group nesting as well. So my built-in administrators group, where I can see my domain admins and enterprise admins, which are currently nested. But going through all the other pages, I can then look into all of my other security groups within my environment, and also monitor who's got access and ensuring that only relevant people have access to those groups as well. But another nice thing you can also do with these reports is also look back at previous configurations. So by default, Netwrix will always report on the current session. Now, from the monitoring plan, you can then import snapshots. So I've currently got one loaded, which is taken back in 2018. So I can then come to that snapshot and then see how things were configured back at that date and time. Now, you may instantly notice that ESX admins is not populated here as the very first security group, as that group didn't exist at that time when that snapshot was taken. But also, I've only got 2 members within my file servers administrators group when this one was taken as well. So if I just jump back to my current session again, I can now see the differences of how those groups are. But if I don't want to run a report on every single security group, you've got a nice effective group membership. So this will then hone in on one individual group. And by default, this populates with the domain admins. Now here I can then see all of my members currently within my domain admins group, but also shows me what domain they belong to as well. So maybe I've got multiple domains in my environment. I want to know, where does that actual user or group belong to? Again, the membership type, are they an explicit member of that group? Maybe they've got access in via another group as well as giving me the status around the object as well. But I can change the filters here to any other security group in my environment, and then obviously look at the effective group membership. But again, maybe I'm wanting to subscribe to certain reports to perhaps the head's department. Again, head of HR, maybe they want a regular report to see who's within their security group, which is going to be granted them access to their data. So they can then verify obviously the current member list and then highlight any user accounts which may need to be removed from those groups as well. But as well as looking at it from an effective group membership, you can also do it from a user perspective, whether you want to look at all user accounts and the groups that they're in, or again, just looking at a single user. Oh, sorry, I went into the wrong report there. Let's look at user accounts last logon time. Here I'm just looking at a single user and again, looking at the effective group membership of that individual user account as well. So by default, this one populates with the administrator, but I could change this to any other account in my environment and then see the effective group membership of that particular account. But lots of other nice reporting around your state in time, some where we went into from the IT risk assessment. So you could then look into things like the last logon time of computer objects, maybe wanting to tidy up stale computer objects, or again, looking into that last logon time of all of my user accounts. Users which got their password set to never expire or not required. So again, I can run those reports here or through the IT risk. But there is a nice one here which looks at user account attributes as well. So this one will pull in a lot of detail from your users, and there's different ways you can maybe utilize this based on what kind of information it is that you want to see. Now, one of the nice things I tend to do around this one is look at the passwords around my user accounts as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to filter out this line here, because by default it always looks at the default users IU. Obviously all my users are structured elsewhere within my Active Directory. So I'm now looking at all of my user accounts across the entire AD. And I'm just going to filter it down to those specific attribute types as well. So again, there's a lot of attributes listed here which you can then utilize to run a report on. But in this instance, I'm just going to look at their password age. I want to know, is their password currently expired? And when did they last reset their password as well? So I'm now just filtering it down to those particular details. So example here, I've got a user that's got a very old password. It is also currently expired, and obviously, when did they last change their password as well? Maybe I wanted to start filter these results down a little bit further. Perhaps I want to see, all of my users which have got a very old password. So again, I can start using the attribute filters and then start looking at the password age. Maybe I want to know everyone that's got a password which is older than 180 days. So what I'm now doing is just filtering it down just to those accounts only within my Active Directory. So if there's any regular users here which have got really old passwords, if their password's not currently expired, perhaps they should be resetting their passwords. But another nice one you could also do around the reporting here. Let's just go back to my attributes. Is also looking at, let's turn these off. Again, I can then look into things like the last logon time, days that they're inactive, and also just show me all accounts which are currently enabled as well. So again, a different way I can then look into stale logons. So now across my Active Directory, again, I'm looking at all of my user accounts. I can see, is their account currently enabled? Where I'm just obviously filtering down to yes, enabled accounts. I can see how long that user has been inactive. And again, what's the last time that individual person logged on, or has that individual person ever logged on as well? But again, I can also start filtering these results down again, maybe looking at accounts which have been inactive over a certain time period. So let's now go to, again, my days inactive. Again, maybe I'm wanting to say, let's filter it down to 6 months perhaps. So I've got 3 user accounts, which are obviously, had no activity over 6 months. Maybe I'm wanting to, again, look at removing these users or disabling these. Do I need to have these accounts enabled? But again, obviously looking at those accounts which maybe got created, which actually never got utilized as well. So again, another nice way where you can also look into, stale users within your Active Directory. But also part of the AD module is obviously your group policies, where you can then look into all group policy changes, again, maybe something specific. Is anyone changing things like your account policies? But let's just run an all group policy report. Just done a few the other day. So here I've modified my default domain policy. Again, who is it that modified it when it happened? But more importantly, what did I change in that policy as well? So if I've added something new, I would see added here. In this case, I've obviously made a modification, or if I did, maybe deleted an entry, I can see that entry being deleted. But what was it I modified? So in this case, I've modified the minimum password length. Previously, it was set at 6 characters, and I've also now dropped it down to 3 characters. So, am I starting to tamper with things like, password complexity settings? But also monitoring things like new policies being created. Who is creating those policies? What settings are being enabled on those policies? Again, any changes which are also being done. So in this case, where I added some new settings to that policy which I created, and what did I add to those policies? But you've also got your state and time reporting, which will then show you, how your policy objects are configured, whether I want to list them all by name, or maybe looking at the current state of my account policies, how are they currently set up? But like Active Directory, again, I've got the ability to look back at previous configurations on these reports as well. But a nice report here you have as well as looking at things like identical settings as well. So maybe you're wanting to tidy up your group policy objects. So in this case, what policies have got the same settings between them? What is the name of that policy and what settings are identical? But they may not necessarily be linked to the same organizational unit. There could be different OUs. But just drilling down and verifying, where is that policy actually linked? Maybe I'm not wanting to have those duplicate settings. But also with Active Directory, taking all that login activity. So this is where you can then start to monitor all your domain logons of all your users, whether you wanted to see who's logging on and off your domain controllers. But a nice report I tend to use here is looking at account logons with most login activity, where it's going to show me all user logons, how many of those are successful, how many of those are failed. And again, maybe paying a bit more close attention to the failed activity of what's going on in that environment. Where are those failed attempts coming from? Am I seeing lots of failed attempts across all my users? Maybe it's an indication that there may be a brute force attack happening within the environment, perhaps. Maybe someone's trying to gain access to my systems. But as well as the Active Directory reporting, let's jump out to the main screen. You can also set up alerts around that particular module as well. Now, there are a lot of predefined alerts within Netwrix across all data sources, but let's take a look at some of the Active Directory ones. So as well as monitoring things like changes to your privilege groups, I can also be alerted to that kind of activity. So if anyone's been added or removed from a privilege group, so what I can do is just come into this alert, turn it on, obviously enable my recipients that's going to receive it, whether I want to be notified via an email or a text message for this alert. Maybe I don't want to receive it via email, in which case I'm going to post it to the behavior anomalies dashboard by turning this on and giving that alert a relevant score, where it's going to be a higher risk or a low risk based on the severity of the event. You'll see this will then get posted to the behavior anomalies dashboard, and it will then associate the relevant number of points to that individual person, which then triggered the alert. But again, you could obviously have both if you want to do. You can have it by email, text message, and still post them to the behavior anomalies dashboard. Utilizing the filters is where you're specifying the criteria for the alert. So what has to be triggered before it's actually taken place. So in this case, obviously someone has to be added into a group. And we're looking obviously at the domain admins, enterprise admins, or schema admins. Now you could duplicate these alerts if you wanted to, and then start building your own. I set one up again around my company secrets group, which is monitoring, obviously going to gain access to certain critical data. So I want to be notified around changes to that group within my Active Directory. Set up slightly different, where I'm just looking for a modification to a member to that group rather than anything specific around someone being added or removed. Maybe I wanted to be alerted around accounts becoming enabled, maybe deleted. Perhaps I want to monitor closely a specific activity around a certain account, perhaps, or things like parcel being tampered with. So again, parcel to never expire being enabled. But also looking at, again, things like login activity. So logons from my domain, maybe I wanted to be alerted around multiple failed logons. So in this case, this one's going to be a threshold-based alert. So if anyone generates 3 failed logons within a row, within 1 minute, this alert will then be triggered. But other nice things you can also do is automate a response action with alerts being triggered as well. So here you can then enable this, specify the script that you want to run. We don't provide any out-of-the-box scripts, but it's pretty much down to your own imagination. So anything you're writing that PowerShell script would then be actioned based upon that event or the alert which is going to be triggered. But lots of other alerting, just hop out into some other data sources here quickly. Perhaps things like your file servers, SharePoint Online. Maybe you wanted to be alerted around things like mass data removals, if anyone's mass deleting data, or looking at things like potential ransomware activities. So I'm also looking at things like modifications and renames. But whereas my Active Directory, I'm also looking at changes to security groups. I've also configured some alerts here, which is then monitoring permission changes to certain directories. As well as the group level in AD, I also want to know if anyone starts tampering with the NTFS permissions to that particular folder as well. So in this case, I'm looking for anyone adding user permissions or group permissions to that specific directory. Or another nice one which I set up, which is looking to see whether the everyone group, is anyone going to use those permissions anywhere? Now, row risk scores have alerts have a risk score on them that are then being posted to the behavior anomalous dashboards. So this is where you can start looking into your most riskiest users within the environment. So you've got a timeline over the last 30 days where you can see what score is generated. Maybe there's been a day where it's been a high peak of activity, which you may want to focus in on. So I can change my filters to look at that specific date range to see what users just triggered alerts on that day only. But obviously in this case, over the last 30 days, I can see who are my top users, who is the most riskiest user. So let's go and view the profile of D. Harris. So I can now see again over the last 30 days when this individual person has been triggering alerts, but also what are the alerts he's triggered as well. So I can see obviously there was a change to my company secrets group. He added someone into a privileged group. So expand the details. And again, the date and time of the activity when that took place, what was that privileged group someone was added to, and again, who is the member that was added into that group as well. So as well as receiving those alerts via an email or a text message, I can also see what's been going on under the behavior anomalies also. Now, utilizing the linked actions, I can start pulling back activity. So maybe I wanted to look into the details of that one event. So I can pull that event back within the interactive search. Again, I can also drill down and look into the activity records, the profile of that user which made that change. But if I've got a user here which is triggering lots of alerts, maybe this person's behavior is looking a little bit risky. Perhaps I want to look at their complete audit trail. So again, here I can show all user activity. So again, based on what data sources I'm utilizing with Netwrix, where has this person been active? What has he been doing within my environment? So I've now got that complete history where I can start reviewing everything that he's been up to. Now, another nice element that we have as well, part of our Windows Server module, is we've also got a video recording service as well. So again, this is where I'm also recording my Active Directory, also where I'm monitoring admins logging onto that server and then closely paying attention to what changes they're also doing. So as well as capturing the change activity within the reporting itself, I can also now physically play back what it was that was going on that server at that moment in time as well. So what was that individual person doing? So a nice way where you can then utilize this maybe for catching blind spot activity, or perhaps you've got applications which don't generate any logs. You want to pay close attention to what people are doing. Maybe you have third-party admins or third-party providers coming in and doing stuff, maybe monitoring or administering your environment for you, but you want to pay a little bit more close attention to what it is that they're doing. So again, you can then set this up to actually record their activity when they are coming into your infrastructure. But let's go back into the reports. So other aspects you can also utilize are things like your user behavior and blind spot reports. So again, from an Active Directory perspective, I can also look into things like privilege elevation. So has anyone temporarily had their privileges elevated to my domain admins, enterprise admins, or schema admins? So again, I've got an event here which took place. I can see the admin, which done the change, as well as removed them. But what was the privilege group that they got elevated to? And again, who is that account that had their permissions elevated? And also, how long did they have permissions to that security group as well? And by default, we're just looking at them existing in those groups for 5 hours or less. But as well as looking at privilege groups, another thing you can also do here is just simply drop a wildcard into the group name. If I rerun that report, I can also look into any other security groups where someone may have had temporary access as well. So again, as well as my domain admins, I can see my company secrets group, my HR group, and again, that same user that also had his permissions elevated. So maybe I wanted to run some queries around the interactive search engine, maybe to look at this account or this user to have a little bit more, pay a bit of close attention as to what it is that they've been up to. But as well as looking at temporary users, also looking at things like temporary user accounts. Yes, are user accounts being utilized just for certain actions? Why are certain accounts just existing for a short period of time within the AD? And again, I've got that same user accounts again, same admin that created him, when did he create him, and then when did he delete him as well. So certainly something's looking a little bit suspicious here. Maybe I certainly have a rogue admin on my environment. But other aspects from the Active Directory, again, looking into things like recently enabled user accounts as well, or maybe I'm wanting to start looking at the login activity of users. In this case, this will show me from a single user what endpoints that user's logged onto, again, how many login attempts there's been. But drilling down, I can also look at that login activity as well. So it's going to give me the full event that took place. Or I could also run it in reverse as well to look at the actual workstation and what users have logged onto that workstation as well. Under things like suspicious activity, maybe I wanted to see what admins are doing outside business hours, so I can look into their events here. But again, this will bring in other data sources as well. So across the entire environment, which I'm going to audit with Netwrix, I can then start to see what has been happening outside business hours, who's been logging on between the hours 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. and doing activities. Again, I can drill down into the details of that user to then see what has been going on. So it's going to group it all for me by data source, what has been taking place. Just focusing away from the Active Directory, just before we wrap up things as well. Just want to go over a couple of other little reports, just at a very, very high level for you. So, as well as focusing on things like your Active Directory, also paying close attention to your data as well. Now, what we've got here is some data classification reports. Now, this will hook into another application that we have, our Netwrix data classification. So with this, I can start to see, what kind of sensitive data I have out there. Where is it located across my file repositories, my SharePoint or SharePoint Online? So again, all seen, looking into the permissions, who's currently got access to that data. Some different ways you can then utilize this. Let's maybe look at our count by source to begin with. So this will then give me a very high level report as to how much sensitive data I've got, how many documents are sensitive across my file server, but also what are their categories, what sensitive data is held within those documents. And again, the content sources, I can see what file shares I'm scanning for sensitive information. But also I can start going down into those top level folders, start seeing where that data is located, maybe start paying attention where I've got my highest concentrations of sensitive information, also ensuring that only relevant people have access to that data. So again, also looking at it from an Active Directory perspective now, what security groups are assigned access to that information and who's within those security groups which could have access as well. But more importantly, again, you're also looking at things like overexposed data as well. What is that data? what are those files, and what sensitive content is contained within them. So again, I can start moving this data off to a more secure location. What is that file name, and what sensitive data is held within that particular document. Maybe I wanted to look at, again, a very high level across my SharePoint sites, perhaps, or SharePoint Online, just looking at where are my highest concentrations of sensitive data. So looking across all of my SharePoint sites, again, I can see what has the highest concentrations, what sensitive data is located in that particular directory, or even more drilling down and then reviewing the permissions to see who has access as well. Or maybe running things like my object permissions reports from my SharePoint, or even my file servers to now start seeing what users have access to that data. So again, what is the directory? I can see the shared folder contains PII data, it contains financial record data as well as GDPR, and what users have access, and again, what level of access they have as well. But also start looking into the things like the activity. So who is accessing those documents which contain sensitive information? Whether it's a read attempt, a modification, a deletion, maybe permissions again being changed, perhaps, what activity is taking place, what is that file, again, who is it that's done the action, but again, more importantly, what sensitive data is contained within that particular file as well. So just a little bit there around the data classification reports, which obviously hook off into our Netwrix data classification platform. But also I can also look at the activity, maybe just from a normal file server perspective or SharePoint Online, again, looking into things like the permissions and who's got access to that data. Maybe running things like my folder permissions report, looking into things like excessive access, so who's got access to data but aren't using their permissions, but also looking into things like, again, the activity and what people are doing across that data as well. So just want to jump back over to obviously the report, the slides again. So why use Netwrix? Well, we obviously have a very fast time to value, where you can get value from the platform out of the box and start receiving return on your investment within days rather than months. We have obviously a broader coverage with visibility across a wide range of data repositories and obviously backbone systems. So probably obviously focused across the Microsoft stack, but also looking at things like EMC filers, NetApp filers, Nutanix, data classification, then going into things like Google Drive, Box, OneDrive for Business, Dropbox. We have a non-intrusive architecture, whereas we don't require the use of intrusive agents. That could also then lead to server issues or maybe downtime. Ecosystems integrations. By using the RESTful API, you can then obviously leverage previous investments by obviously integrating them into Netwrix, and also not forgetting our first-class support as well. If you have liked what you've seen today, would like to trial Netwrix, we do obviously offer a 20-day full trial of the software, which can be downloaded as a standalone installer or a virtual appliance, where you can set up and test this within your own environment. If you would like to try Netwrix without the worry of installing, we do have a test drive environment as well, which gives you a bit of a feel for the reporting obviously available, but also more people find benefit around installing it and looking at against their own data. Alternatively, feel free to contact the sales team or Report Star. They'll be more than happy to set up a one-on-one demonstration for you as well, where we can go into a bit more deeper dive across other modules as well. But obviously, before we wrap up, obviously we would like to open it up to any questions that anyone may have. So I don't see anything in the questions box at the moment, but obviously, we will leave it for a moment just in case anyone might be typing up any questions. But is there anything you would like to add in there, Mika, just before we do wrap up?
Yeah, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us for the webinar. We appreciate it. And, as Russell said, If you guys have any questions or queries, or you maybe want to do a bit more of a deeper dive into something like a reporting or, you know, whatever it may be, please give us a shout and we can help you guys out. And yeah, that's about it from my side. Are there any questions, guys? Can you guys see anything?
No questions coming in, but there is a thank you from Nicholas. Obviously, thanks a lot, Nicholas.
Thanks, Nick. Champion. Alrighty, guys. I think that's that. I think we can cut it off. Thank you so much. It was really fantastic. I really appreciate all the help. And guys, yeah, let us know if there's anything else you guys want us to help you guys with.
Yep, certainly. No worries. I'd just like to obviously then just wrap up as well and just say thank you all very much for attending today. Thanks a lot again, Mika.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for helping us set it up, Russell. Guys, have a lovely day and shout if you guys need any help.